It started with the anniversary he forgot and the lie that followed. He said he'd been busy, that deadlines blurred dates. That love wasn't measured in candles or dinner reservations. I smiled, nodded, and didn't tell him I already knew what he'd done last summer, when, late meetings meant hotel rooms by the harbor and receipts he forgot to hide. The woman's name was April, her perfume was citrus and arrogance. And she signed her texts with a heart. I didn't confront him. I called his mother instead. She adored me. She still called me the best thing that ever happened to her son. So I invited her for dinner. Made his favorite meal. Left the folded receipts by the wine glasses, the hotel keycard under his napkin. She noticed before he did. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling just enough to make him freeze. He tried to laugh it off, but mothers recognize the tone of guilt before it forms words. She read the date, the location, the name. Then she looked at him like she didn't recognize what she'd raised. He tried to speak, but she stood up slowly and said, "Your father did the same thing to me once. I thought you were better." The silence that followed was so deep it sounded like judgment itself. She left her plate untouched. I watched him shrink under the weight of something heavier than rage, disappointment. Later that night, he asked me why. "Why would you humiliate me like that?" I said, "Because I wanted you to feel what I felt, exposed, small, unforgettable." He packed a bag, left the house. Called me names that didn't hurt as much as his indifference once had. Months later, his mother sent me a letter. "You did what I never could," she wrote. "You made him see himself." I folded it carefully and placed it next to the hotel key he'd left behind. Revenge wasn't about making him suffer, it was about reminding him that every lie has an audience, and sometimes the person you fear disappointing most isn't your wife, but the woman who taught you what love was supposed to mean. And that's when silence became the loudest revenge. He forgot our anniversary like it was a date that had expired. No flowers, no dinner, not even a text. Just the sound of his car pulling into the driveway an hour late. The faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine. And the quiet confidence of a man who thought lies could pass as routine. I didn't yell. I made him dinner instead, his favorite. The kind his mother taught me to cook. Then I sent her a photo of the table, candles lit, plates untouched, captioned, "He's working late again." She replied instantly, "Funny. He told me he was in Boston for a conference." Boston. We live in Arizona. I poured myself a glass of wine and waited for the echo of that truth to reach her. 2 days later, she showed up at our door, unannounced, uninvited, unafraid. Her name is Marianne. She raised him on guilt and scripture. Believed marriage was sacred even when it rotted. I opened the door before he came home. Let her in. Made tea. Laid the evidence on the counter like an altar. Receipts, texts, photographs of summer nights he didn't spend with me. She read everything in silence. When she finished, she said only one thing: "You remind me of myself 20 years ago." Then she waited for him. When he walked in and saw her sitting there, he froze. She didn't shout. She didn't slap him. She simply asked, "Is this the man you wanted to be?" He couldn't answer. She turned to me, touched my hand lightly, and whispered, "You can leave now, darling. I'll finish this part." I left the house that night and never went back. Weeks later, she called. "He's living at his brother's. He cries a lot, says he doesn't know who to blame." I said, "Let him sit with that." There was a pause, then her voice softened. "You were right to let me see it. He needed to be witnessed." That word stayed with me, witnessed. Not punished, not destroyed. Just seen for what he was. Months later, I received a package. Inside was his wedding ring and a note in her handwriting. He asked me to return this. I told him no one wants what's already broken. I kept the note, not the ring. Because revenge, I learned, doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it only needs light. He forgot our anniversary for the second year in a row. But this time he didn't even bother pretending to feel guilty. He just kissed my forehead, called me sweetheart, and asked if I'd mind moving the date to next weekend, like love could be rescheduled between errands. I didn't cry. I waited. Because I'd already found the photos on his phone. Last summer, the cabin, her red swimsuit. His hand on her thigh. Her name was in the metadata. I didn't delete them. I made copies. A week later, his mother came for Sunday lunch. She was the kind of woman who believed in forgiveness. The kind who thought silence could fix a wound if you just didn't look at it too long. I set the table perfectly. Crystal, linen, candles. I cooked her son's favorite dish. I wanted her comfortable before I ruined her illusions. When dessert came, I handed her the phone. You might want to see what your son did last summer, I said. She thought I was joking. Then she swiped once, twice. Her face went still. That's not, she began, but the name under the photo told her everything. He came into the room too late. She turned the screen toward him and said quietly, "You are your father's son." He stammered, begged, tried to explain. But the look she gave him was colder than anything I could have done. "You embarrassed yourself," she said, "and you embarrassed me." Then she left her half-finished tea and walked out without looking back. He followed her, but she didn't stop. That night, he asked me if I felt proud. I said no, just clean. Because revenge isn't about spectacle. It's about precision. It's about letting the truth find its own way to the people who need to see it. A week later, his mother sent me flowers. No note, just white lilies, morning flowers. I took them as a thank you. Not for hurting her son, but for showing her who he really was. And when the last petal fell, I realized revenge doesn't always burn. Sometimes it blooms quietly in someone else's disappointment. He forgot our anniversary again, but this time it wasn't just forgetfulness, it was arrogance. He walked in past midnight, smelling like cologne that wasn't his. Humming a song too happy for a man with lipstick on his collar. I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I set the table for two, left the candles burning, and poured myself a glass of wine until the wax melted into the shape of something cruel. He went to bed without looking at me. That's when I made my decision. The next morning, I called his mother. "You should visit," I said softly. "I think you need to see what kind of man your son has become." She loved me, maybe more than she loved him, called me her real daughter. The one who kept him human. She arrived that weekend, unannounced. The way mothers do when love turns to suspicion. I greeted her with coffee and a small, satisfied heart. I didn't need to say much. I simply showed her the photos I'd found from last summer, the cabin by the lake, the girl in the red dress, the laughter too loud for innocence. Her eyes didn't blink. "He did this?" she asked. I nodded. "And he told me you were overreacting." She pressed her lips together, the same way he does before a lie. "His father used to say that too," she whispered. "Men like him never think the storm will come from inside the house." When he came home that evening, she was waiting for him in the kitchen. I listened from the hallway as her voice cut through his excuses, steady, low, maternal. "You embarrass every woman who's ever loved you," she said. He shouted once, then silence. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "You don't have to forgive him. Just leave him where he put himself." He moved out 2 days later, took nothing but his clothes and his arrogance. Weeks passed before his mother called again. "He's staying with a friend," she said. "He told me he doesn't understand why I'm angry." I answered, "Because he never understood the difference between being loved and being tolerated." That night, I sat alone at the table where the candles had melted and thought about how revenge sometimes looks like motherhood, the kind that doesn't protect but exposes. The kind that makes a man finally realize who he became when no one was looking. And in that quiet, I decided I didn't need to ruin him any further. I'd already passed his punishment to the one woman he could never escape. He forgot our anniversary like it was nothing more than a date on a bill. Not a pause in time. Not a memory worth revisiting. Just another Thursday. I watched him that morning, tie crooked, phone buzzing. Still lying beautifully with the ease of practice. And I realized the only thing worse than being lied to was being ignored. So I let the truth find its own path. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I called his mother instead. Not to confess, but to suggest. "You might want to ask him about last summer," I said gently. "He's been so nostalgic lately." I heard her confusion sharpen into something older, suspicion. "Last summer?" she repeated. "Yes," I said. "The cabin, the woman, the red dress. You'll find photos if you look hard enough." By evening, the storm had found him. She arrived unannounced, armed with maternal disappointment. I stayed upstairs, listening to the argument unravel like a curse in slow motion. "You lied to me," she said. "You lied to her. Who are you trying to be?" He shouted something about privacy, about me, about how I'd ruined everything. She didn't raise her voice once. "No," she said. "You ruined the version of yourself I defended." When I came down, he was gone. The house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock she'd given us on our wedding day. His mother was sitting at the table, hands folded, eyes tired. "He's gone to his brother's," she said. "You should let him stay gone." She stood to leave, then turned to me and whispered, "You did what I couldn't do 20 years ago, make a man face himself." After she left, I poured 2 glasses of wine and sat alone at the table that was once for celebration. I didn't feel victorious. I felt balanced. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's truth spoken through someone who once believed he was incapable of sin. And as the candles burned low, I realized what I'd really done. I hadn't exposed him to destroy him, I'd let his own mother teach him the language of shame.